Hello students, welcome back to the series on the UPSC Civil Services Mains 2022 paper explanations. So far we have done some aspects of GS1, that is history and geography, and also we have done some parts of GS3, that is the conceptual economy part. And along with that, we have seen environment questions, disaster management and internal security. And the other day we were supposed to have a separate session regarding the agriculture and food processing industry. The reason why agriculture and food processing industry has been separated into a different video is that is the importance of this section. We almost have 50 marks from this particular section coming every year. 3 10 markers, and to be very precise, around 3 15 markers. So when you have 3 10 markers and 3 15 markers, or 2 10 markers and 2 15 markers, it is a huge composition of around 50 marks. Because the reason why this section is so important, when you look at the reason or the rationale behind it, you get to see that the more than 50% of Indian population is driven by agriculture, and most of your administration would lie in that area. And apart from that, you would also have a problem of agrarian distress and also the farmer income insecurity. And in that context, what happens is we get to see that the understanding of the agriculture is important, and looking at food processing industry as a solution, as a methodology to value add and also to enhance the income levels of the farmers. That is what is important. So keeping this background with respect to this particular section, let's look at what were the questions that were asked from this particular section. Now when we look at this particular section, we have seen that is question number 3 and question number 4. Both belong to this particular area of agriculture and food processing industry. And apart from that, we also have the question number 13 and question number 14. Right? So in this, what we are seeing is we are having 2 questions, that is question number 13, question number 14, and also question number 3 and question number 4. And when we look at the brief analysis of this particular questions, and once we get into the detailed solution, when you look at this question, they are asking about what are the major challenges of PDS in India and how can it be made effective and transparent. If you go back to the previous year questions, this was again asked in 2019. Then it was a 15 marker. Now they have asked it for 10 marker. Are you able to understand the significance of previous year questions? Because in GS3 that was very, very evident with respect to the previous year questions as emphasized in Layk's Purana. So what we are seeing is such a kind of understanding has to be happening here. So they are talking about that what are the challenges. And once we have the challenges, we have to see what can be the measures. And one thing we need to understand, that they have already shown that because of these challenges, these are not effective and not transparent. Or them not being effective, them not being transparent is fundamentally due to certain challenges. And that is what is the question asking about. The orientation and the direction of the question is in such way. And when you look at the 4th question, that is elaborate the scope of the food processing, scope and significance of food processing industry in India. So it is fundamentally asking about what are the prospects of such an industry, because you know that as part of the industries, you would study that food processing industry to be a sunrise industry, which is having a very, very high growth in a short time period. Now when you are having high growth rates in a very, very short time period, that is what is creating a significance with respect to food processing industry, as it is considered to be a sunrise industry. So with such a kind of understanding, let's look at the structure, what can be used with respect to this question. When you look at this, they are asking about that what are the main bottlenecks in the upstream and before this, not this question. Yes. You have to look at this. That is, they are asking about that what are the major challenges of PDS. Now, when you look at the major challenges of PDS, the introduction could have been simple. You could have defined that what is this purpose of PDS, or you could have even said that the effectiveness of PDS is that if you are spending 100 paisa, that only 16 paisa is reaching in the form of the PDS system. So that could have been an introduction which is showing what? Which is showing that the system is non-effective. And it is not only showing that the system is non-effective, it is also showing that system is not transparent. Now, when it is able to show that the system is not transparent and system is not effective, that is what is the question being asked. And the reason for such a non-effectiveness and the reason for such a thing, when we enter the body, now here what we write is that we can talk about the major challenges of PDS. The major challenges of PDS could have been the heading that we are using here. So when you look at the major challenges of PDS, now before that, if you want to still make it a little applicative, you can talk about the what are the objectives. Before we talk about the major challenges, we could have talked about what are the objectives, for example, to create a buffer stock, or for example, to moderate the market prices, or for example, to ensure food security. So all these are major objectives with respect to PDS system. And once we specify that kind of flowchart with respect to your objectives, then we can move forward talking about what are the major challenges. And when you look at the major challenges, the major challenge that we come across is what, my dear? It is with respect to the identification of beneficiaries, and where we see both sorts of errors, that is with respect to the inclusion errors and also exclusion errors. Inclusion errors and also exclusion errors is what is the major challenge that is persisting with respect to this. Because what happens is, when you talk about the inclusion and exclusion errors, we also come across an issue called ghost beneficiaries. We also come across an issue called the ghost beneficiaries. We also come across an issue called ghost beneficiaries, and when you talk about this ghost beneficiaries, that is a very, very big problem that we see. Right? Then, moving forward, the second major challenge that is persisting with respect to this particular PDS system is with respect to the production and also with respect to procurement. And when you talk about this procurement, now, when you talk about this procurement, it is what? It is a kind of open procurement system. It is a kind of open procurement system rather than targeted, or rather than decentralized system. And when we have such an open procurement system, and when we have such a when we do not have such a decentralized system, automatically there is so much of wastage that is present. And not only this, but also with respect to the distribution aspect. Now, when you talk about the distribution aspect, that is the pilferages that are present with respect to the fair price shops. The pilferages that are present with respect to the fair price shops. And when we have such a pilferage with respect to fair price shops, again that is creating a major challenge in the context of PDS system. And not only that, we also have an issue with respect to the storage of the procured greens. The storage system or the infrastructural bottlenecks. That are present, because when you look at this infrastructural bottlenecks, what happens is the quality of the food grains have been deteriorating. And not only that, you would also come across another major challenge is with respect to the black markets that are created. The black markets that are created, or the black marketing, or the system of corruption that is present. Because what happens is, with respect to the infrastructure, we can also include the transportation system. The transportation system, or the absence of the end-to-end computerization with respect to this. Right? Then, apart from this, now here we can talk about how it can be made effective and transparent. So that means measures to make it effective and transparent. Now, when you talk about these measures to make it effective and transparent, what we can see here, the major suggestion that has been given is the end-to-end computerization. End-to-end computerization is the major suggestion that has been provided with respect to one committee called Justice Vadhva Committee. Now, Justice Vadhva Committee has observed that there are a number of pilferages that are present with respect to PDS as a system. And when they have observed that pilferages are present in this PDS system, they have suggested end-to-end computerization has to happen. And not only that, we also need to talk about not only the end-to-end computerization, but we also have to talk about the Aadhaar based. And not only the Aadhaar based systems, but we can also talk about, that is especially the digitalization of ration cards can also be used, maybe the QR code system, right? So digitalization of ration cards can also be made with respect to improving this. Then apart from that, we also have to talk about the storage infrastructure, which has to be improved, because Shanta Kumar committee talks about that. Shanta Kumar committee talks about such a kind of recommendation of enhancing the storage systems, enhancing or improving the storage systems, especially with frequent audits, right? Then apart from that, we can also talk about certain localized audit systems, or just like the concept of social audit that was introduced in MG Narega, we can also introduce such a kind of social audit system, especially for the delivery of this PDS system. Then apart from all of these measures, we can also talk about the decentralized procurement system. The decentralized procurement system, which would enable not only, you would see that most of these buffer stocks are derived from a very specific areas, right? So certain aspects or certain regions are only benefited from such a kind of procurement. So in this, what is happening is we have to talk about this particular decentralized procurement system in this context, right? Now, in case if you have to look for way forward, because what happens is the major issue that comes to the PDS system and the implementation of PDS system is the identification. Now, in that context, maybe we can go for DBT, direct benefit transfer, or we can go for the concept called the food coupon concept. We can go for food coupons, right? We can go for food coupons, because in this context, what we have now here, the context also can be with respect to one nation, one ration card, ONOR, one nation, one ration card can also be a context that has been set for this particular program. So we have to see that the PDS have to be revamped. PDS have to be revamped, and in which we have to categorically talk about Shanta Kumar committee and also Justice Wadhwa committee with respect to the recommendations that have been made. It's a straightforward question, my dear, and it is a repeated question. That is the importance of previous year questions, and we try to emphasize this importance of previous year questions, especially in the program that we are doing called Lax Purana. Please understand that, right? Then, moving on to the next question. That is with respect to elaborate the scope and significance. The question is asking about elaborate the scope and significance of food processing industry in India. Now, when we talk about the scope and significance of food processing in India, now what we have to see is with respect to the two dimensions in this. Now, we can talk about the introduction. Now, in the introduction, what can be given? In the introduction, we can talk about the significance of food processing industry. Or if you have to talk about something else, we can also say that there is around 93,000 crore food grains have been wasted. 93,000 crore food grains have been wasted. 93,000 crore worth food grains have been wasted, and in that context, what happens is the food processing industry becomes the need of the hour to minimize the wastage. So you can start off talking about the significance with respect to the food processing industry, and then when we enter with respect to the body of this, the first thing that we have to talk about is what is the scope of food processing industry. This is the first scope. Now, when we talk about this, what is the scope of food processing industry? Here we can say that what is the scope of food processing industry in India? One major aspect we can say is more than 50% of Indian population is dependent on agriculture. That itself is a major scope that is present. Then apart from that, we can also talk about that around India is the sixth largest food and grocery market. India is the sixth largest food and grocery market, right? So this itself makes us and gives us different scope with respect to the food processing industry. Then apart from that, what else we can talk? We can talk about that around the food processing industry accounts for around India's 32% of food market. India's 32% of food market is occupied by food processing industry. That is what is showing with respect to this. Then apart from that, what else? When you talk about this food processing industry, we also see that this food processing industry, the scope for food processing industry is the diversity of crops. The diversity of crops, and not only the diversity of crops, but we also see with respect to the emergence of MSME sector, but also we also see the what is the governmental support that is being provided to such a kind of systems. So that is what is providing the scope. And not only that, we also see that there are emerging markets especially for ready to eat products. There are emerging markets especially for ready to eat products, for the reason that when you look at the scope of food processing industry, what happens is you see that around 32% of Indian population is urbanized. And when we know that around 32% of Indian population is urbanized, it fundamentally shows that all of this urban population is a market with respect to ready to eat this thing. And when you look at the urbanization prospects, you see that around 32% now, as per 2011 census, and you see that it becoming 50% by 2040. This also provides a greater scope for food processing industry. The next part is what is the significance of food processing industry. And when you talk about what is the significance of food processing industry, we get to understand that with respect to the significance of food processing industry, the major significance is with respect to the value addition. Major significance is value addition. The general example that you discuss in classes is that is with respect to your tomatoes and tomato ketchup. Right, you see that there is so much of valuation, there is so much of increase in the value addition that is happening. Then not only the value addition, but also it will enhance the shelf life, and as the shelf life is enhanced, you would see that the marketability increases. The marketability increases. As the marketability is increasing, you know that the profit margins are also going to increase for the farmer. As the profit margins are increasing, you would see that the farmer's income would increase. And once the farmer's income is increasing, what happens? He would have better investment. He would have better investment with respect to the inputs in which he is putting into the agriculture as an activity. So that is the another significance that we have with respect to this, right? Apart from such a significance, what else we have with respect to this is it is regarding the employment generation. It is regarding the employment generation. Right, this is also a major significance with respect to the food processing industry. Not only that, we also see that with respect to the forex, because the agri exports can be enhanced. Agri exports can be enhanced because when you look at Indian agricultural exports, they are all stagnant. They are all stagnant at 1.8% of the global agricultural exports, and as they are stagnant at 1.8% for the past decade, you would see that with the onset of food processing industry and with the value addition or with the kind of processing that is involved in the food processing industry, you would see that it would also enable it would also provide an impetus for the food agri exports to happen, and you would see that the forex or the foreign exchange to be improving. Right, that is another kind of significance that is present with respect to this. Not only this, the other side, when you look at the other significance with respect to the food processing industry, we can talk on the side of the consumers as well. We can talk on the side of the consumers as well, and you would see that there are greater levels of consumer satisfaction. Right, that is with respect to the significance. And when you talk about the simple conclusion with respect to food processing industry, we can talk about the significance or the conclusion with respect to food processing industry. It is a key with respect to doubling up of farmers' income. It is a key with respect to doubling up of farmers' income for the reason when you talk about Ashok Dalwai's committee. When you talk about Ashok Dalwai committee, it categorically talked about measures with respect to doubling of farmers' income. So in that context, this becomes important, right? So this is with respect to the 10 markers of this particular section. We would discuss about 15 markers in the next video. Thank you.